This family is about to become lunch for a huge prehistoric shark. Is there a chance for salvation? We'll find out from our recap of the movie The Black Demon. Two men in the dead of night sail a boat to a large oil rig on the high seas. Chad stays in the boat and his friend Nacho dives. He dives all the way down to the pillar of the oil rig and attaches a demolition bomb with a countdown timer on it. At that moment, Chad throws a lit match overboard, and the water immediately catches fire. Looks like there is an oil leak on the platform. Once Nacho attaches the bomb, he tries to get to the surface, but something grabs him and drags him away. Suddenly, it gets very light, and hundreds of brightly colored fish and jellyfish swim around the man. He looks at the creatures with curiosity. However, in seconds all the fish are gone, and the diver is attacked by something enormously big. Chad tries to call his comrade on the walkie-talkie, but he doesn't respond. Then he realizes that something went wrong. He starts to panic, and in just a second, a tremendous shark swallows him. In the next scene, we meet Inspector Paul's close-knit family. The man monitors the safety of the oil rigs. This time, he decides to come to work with his wife Inez, daughter Audrey, and a young son Tommy. Paul shows his children his workplace, the offshore oil rig El Diamante. He has to check it out once again. The family arrives in a small Mexican town where everyone is very hostile to the unwelcome guests. Poverty and devastation are all around. The only hotel in town is closed, and the people on the street refuse to help the Americans. The local kingpin named El Rey is particularly aggressive. He is about to start a fight with Paul, but suddenly Inez appears and speaks to him in Spanish. She says she was born here and asks to take them to the nearest pub. For rewards, of course. El Rey agrees and takes the family to the nearest pub. On the way, they come across a large altar of the Aztec god Tlaloc. El Rey puts some bills on it. Tommy also comes to the altar and sneakily steals one of the small figures from it, putting his Snickers instead. At the pub, Paul receives a phone call. His supervisors require him to arrive at the rig immediately. The man promises his family to come back before sundown and asks them to find a hotel. Tommy reads on his tablet creepy legends about the scary god Tlaloc, and Paul is not happy about it. The inspector heads to the boathouse and asks the guards to inform his supervisors that he will be arriving soon. However, the guard instead puts away the walkie-talkie and tears up his photo. Paul gets into the boat and heads off into the high seas with his old friend Boatman. Paul wonders why the town has fallen into despair. The boatman sadly explains that it's all the fault of the demon that was awakened by El Diamante. He drops Paul off at a small wooden pier in the middle of the sea and refuses to sail further because of a bad feeling. The inspector has to get to the oil rig alone, using another boat. While the man tries to get to work, his family is bored in a pub. Inez looks anxiously out at the sea. She finds it strange that there is not a single bird in the sky. Some locals come up to them and start brazenly harassing the woman. Then he drinks her beer and grabs her daughter's hand. Inez immediately grabs an empty bottle and knocks the jerk out. She threatens the others with a bottle shard and takes the children out of the pub. But on the street, another nasty surprise awaits her. Someone has punctured the tires of their car and even left a sharp knife in one of them. That jerk, in the company of his friends, comes out of the bar. So Inez with her children runs to the pier. The woman begs one of the boatmen to take her to El Diamante. A bunch of money makes him agree quickly. Meanwhile, Paul is approaching the rig in his boat. The closer he gets to El Diamante, the blacker the water becomes. There is a pile of trash floating next to the rig. Paul pulls out of the water a scuba diver's mask with a red stain on the glass. It's not the most pleasant find. The man finally gets to the oil rig and tries to find the workers, but there is no one there at all. He wanders through the empty cabins to find a small menacing dog in one of them. A man with a machete appears behind him, and another one follows him. Both of them are very aggressive. Paul tries to explain to them who he is and what he's doing here. It turns out that these workers are named Chato and Junior, and they are the last living people on El Diamante. Suddenly, there's a motor noise. It's one of the boatmen with Paul's family on board. Audrey dips her hand in the water, and it immediately turns black. It turns out the water near the rig is polluted with oil. But that's not the worst of it. Much worse is a huge shark fin circling near their boat. Chato and Junior fire flares towards the boat and knock on the iron railing to distract the predator from its prey. The waves come up and one of them overturns Paul's boat and takes it to the seabed. The terrified boatman sails the boat as fast as he can and finally docks at the rig. While disembarking, Audrey falls overboard and is submerged in the water for a few seconds. At depth, she sees parts of human bodies and comes to the surface in horror. The girl covered in oil is pulled on the rig just in the nick of time. Audrey tells about what she saw in the water, but no one believes her. People are much more concerned about the fate of the boatman who tries to get away from this dangerous place as soon as possible. Alas, the shark turns out to be much faster, and it is truly giant. The family comes to their senses in one of the cabins on the rig. Tommy notices several figures on the closet that look like the one he's stolen from Tlaloc's altar. Chato tells them that it's impossible to leave the rig. Everyone who has tried to do so has become the breakfast, or lunch or dinner of a huge shark. That's why he and Junior have been living on the rig for a very long time. This predator is known by two names. One is the Black Demon, and the other is Megalodon. Audrey and Tommy meet a dog named Toro. Despite being small, he is very vicious. Paul is told three more unpleasant pieces of news. The first is that there has been an oil leak on the rig for a very long time, which pollutes the surrounding areas. The second is that the bosses don't give a damn about it. And the third, a shark is constantly attacking one of the pillars, trying to destroy the rig to get to the yummy humans as soon as possible. There's no connection and the walkies don't work. They have to restore the power to fix this. But that means someone has to dive and plug in the cables. Chato and Junior are willing to take the risk. Before the dive, Chato tells an ancient legend that the god Tlaloc sends a megalodon to punish people for being greedy. Paul thinks these are just local horror stories, but Tommy believes Chato's tales. Chato gives the boy an amulet which should bring him good luck. The workers put on their gear, get into the closed diving bell and start submerging. Fortunately, they have video cameras to keep in touch with Paul. Once submerged, they open the hatch, swim out and find where the cables broke. The divers head back into the closed diving bell to grab some tools for repairs. Chato notices some suspicious lights. He swims closer and sees a demolition bomb with a countdown timer attached to a pillar of the rig. They have only 2.5 hours before the explosion. Paul is dismayed when Chato shows him the find. Meanwhile, Junior starts seeing things that Audrey has seen. There is even someone's eye staring at him. The man panics and swims closer to the diving bell, gets inside and looks out for Chato. At that moment, his partner is swept away by a stream of water from a passing shark. Apparently, the megalodon takes Chato as easy prey, so it attacks the diving bell and drags it to the seabed. Junior screams as the iron structure he's sitting in starts to clasp. Chato comes to the surface and climbs up onto the rig. Junior comes to the surface as well, or rather, half of Junior. Ines and Paul are in panic. They're fighting because they have no idea what to do next. They almost get into a fight. However, their quarrel ends with a tender kiss, and Paul goes to Chato to seek advice. He spots several ships on the horizon. The inspector screams and wants to fire a flare, but it's only an illusion. There are no ships on the sea. Chato reminds Paul that this is the trick of a demon who is punishing them for their sins. The inspector gets angry and claims that it's all nonsense superstition, and then Chato punches him right in the face. Ines saves her husband from a second punch. She demands that the man stop, and a furious Paul leaves for the children's cabin. There, Paul has come up with a new plan. They can try to redirect the water supply system to restart the generator. Ines asks her husband to make up with Chato and work together so they can increase their chances of survival. If they can get the power back on, they can fix the walkie-talkie and call for help. Ines finds a stack of old documents in one of the cabins. The El Diamante offshore oil rig security reports are among them, and all of them signed by her husband. It turns out that Paul has been writing reports for years, stating that everything is fine here and that there are no problems. Meanwhile, Audrey searches through the lockers, hoping to find something useful. useful and finds an old inflatable raft in one of them. Tommy comes to the edge of the rig with a wooden boat and small figures in it. He names them Tommy, Audrey, Mom, Dad, and Chato and places Tlaloc's totem with them. The boy launches the boat onto the water and asks Tlaloc to forgive them and let them return home. At that moment, the figure Tommy named his father falls into the water. The shark hits the pillar once again, and Tommy falls off the rig right into the filthy water. The boy screams desperately, and his parents run to save him. They jump into the water after their son, and a huge shark appears there immediately. Audrey throws a life preserver and pulls her mom and brother onto the rig, while Paul distracts the predator. When everyone is finally safe, Ines immediately throws her husband into a huge scandal, claiming that it is him who is to blame. Paul admits that he has indeed done horrible things, but he was doing it to make money for his family. Ines calls him a monster and walks away, and they only have 1 hour left before the explosion. Paul goes back to Chato to finish the job. They finally manage to get the power back on. The inspector tells the worker the whole truth. At first, Paul tried to work honestly, but the bosses didn't give a damn about the employees or the environment. He was forced to choose between writing false reports or being fired. Paul agreed, and now the bosses just decided to blow him up along with the dangerous oil rig to cover up their crimes. Chato repairs the walkie-talkie and tries to call for help, but there is a short circuit and they are again out of connection. Ines and the kids are taping up the holes in the inflatable raft they found. It turns out that Audrey was pretty good at chemistry in school, so she pulls some polystyrene foam out of her life jacket, pours acetone on it, mixes it up and gets a glue-like substance. She cuts pieces of fabric out of the life jackets and she puts the glue-like substance on them. She is trying to glue the holes in the old raft. Paul shows up in Chato's cabin and claims he's going to save everyone. He has a new plan. He's going to dive underwater to seal the oil leak. Then he's going to remove the bomb and feed it to the shark. Paul's planning to wait out the explosion in the remains of the diving bell and then come to the surface to sail away with his family in an old raft with a bottle of good tequila. Great plan, except it sounds way too impossible. Paul is well aware of this, but he has no other choice. Everyone prays to Tlaloc and asks the vengeful god to spare their lives. Paul hugs and kisses his wife. Then he puts on the necessary gear and dives underwater. The first part of his plan goes very well. The man goes down to the right depth, finds the explosive device, removes it from the pillar and straps it to his chest. Now he has to fix the leak. First he has to shut off the valve, but to do this, Paul has to swim to the broken power cables and solder them. This provides enough power to the rig to shut off the oil supply. At that moment, Paul's family, Chato and his dog get on the raft to sail away from El Diamante, and sure enough, the Megalodon shows up right away. Paul manages to hide from the shark in the structure of the rig. The man looks at the countdown timer and connects by radio with his family to say goodbye. With 25 seconds left before the explosion, Paul gets out of the structure and waits for the shark to appear. A huge predator, a true black demon, rushes towards him and opens its jaws. The family is crying out in agony. At the same moment, a speedboat appears near them. El Rey arrived with his men to rescue them after he received their SOS signal over the radio. Everyone gets from the raft to the boat and watches the oil rig collapse right in front of them. It didn't withstand that much damage. The boat floats towards the shore, and it starts to rain. We see a wooden boat with 4 figures on it, but it suddenly goes underwater.